To create the smaller mirror, I could just duplicate the larger one and move it over, but I think if I scaled it in that way, it would look a little strange. And it doesn't really have the same detail on the back. So I think I'm just going to begin fresh and create a new cube for this one. So let's just press Shift A and bring in a cube. And of course, I've somehow placed it in the vehicle main. Let me bring that out. And I'll hit M and move this up to the scene collection here. Now I'll hide that and select the scene collection again. All right, so now let's go ahead and scale this in the Y down like that. And let's move around back here with the 1 key. And I'll just move it over. And it looks like it's placed right about, a third of the way down here. So maybe I'll go to wireframe and let's kind of place it where we want it. And then scale it in the Z and maybe the X and just kind of get it where we think it should go. Maybe it isn't quite that big, actually. Let me bring it down some like this. It looks like it's a little closer to the big mirror than the tubing here would suggest. I may be able to tab into edit mode here and grab this part of the tubing and kind of move it over just a little bit like that. That might help some. So then we can now place this here. And now it's a little bit closer to that mirror. Yeah, I think that'll work. All right, let's see if we can make it about the right width here. S and Y. And I'll pull it forward. And then let's pretty much go through the same kind of process we did for the other one. This one too, I think, has a curve to it. So I will tab into edit mode and insert 3 edges here, like that. With these selected still, I think I can maybe pull out a bit and then Alt-click this edge loop and pull this one out some too. We've got just a bit of a curve to it. I'll go ahead and apply the scale. And then let's work on the corners again. If we tab into edit mode and go to edge select, and let's just get these 4 corners. And in the same way we did before, let's just press Control B and move the mouse and then scroll the mouse wheel until we get it about the right curvature there. Let's try that. I could also grab these edges and maybe scale them out a bit in the the X. And maybe now this one could go out just a little bit more than the others, just to give a little bit of a curve there. All right, and now the front, same thing, I think. We just grab these, hit the I key, and inset that. And then let's hit E and push in. We'll hit E and pull back out. And then scale in like this. See how that worked. Yeah, okay. For the back, I don't know that we need a whole lot here. There's just kind of looks like an extrusion out the back. So let's grab these. I'll hit E and click, and then I'll scale in with the S key like this. And then maybe let's just extrude this back, straight back. And then we can kind of scale in just a bit. So it looks like it's maybe scaled in more in the X, like this, than the Z. I don't know. Let's give that a try. We could try it at least. And then maybe I should actually grab these faces and flatten them a bit so they fit onto the back of that tube a little better. All right, so now what let's do is let's try and smooth this. I'd like to maybe join all these together as one object. Let me just see if I can add it to this object here. I'll press Control J and add that so they're all one object, and then let's go ahead and make sure it's smoothed. And with the same smoothing angle as the other one, yeah, I think that should be fine. I feel like now that I've done that, I feel like I could scale this up in the Z just a little bit more like that. Okay, now what let's do is go ahead and add those cylindrical pieces. I think what I'll do is go ahead and just bring the cursor to where the origin is there with Shift S2. And then let's create a new cylinder. We certainly don't need 32 sides. How about 12? Let's try that. Let's go with no cap fills for now, and then let's take this down to 0.1 and 0.2 here. Let's move it back, spin it in the x-axis with RX90, and it looks like from the side we need to place one in here, like this, and it looks like it's a little bit farther out like this. Yeah, so I could move it out like that, and then this one could go about like that. And it looks like we should go ahead and close off the front here. So I'll select that edge loop. I'll press Alt-Z to be able to see through it here. And to close that up, we could do a couple of things. We could hit the F key, and that'll close it up with an N-gon there. And then let's go ahead and just select this whole thing with the L key, and I'll press Shift-D-Y, and let's move this out like this. We're going to need to close up the back of this one as well, aren't we? So let's go ahead and just hit the F key there. And then if we select this and scale it in the Y with S and Y, we can bring that down, move it in. They're fairly close, aren't they? And then what we can do is go ahead and bevel this edge just a little bit. We don't need a whole lot here. Let's press Control B and pull that out like that. Maybe scroll the mouse wheel. Let's just go with that, like that. And now we can take this and move it over to the other one. Let's hit Shift D and X and move it over here. And are those big enough? That's what I'm wondering. I feel like it's not quite big enough. Let me delete this and let's scale this up. Scale this up a bit. And I feel like I could grab this edge and pull it forward some just so it isn't going to cut through. There we go. And let's scale this up just a little bit more. Yeah, something like that, I think. There we go. Now let's duplicate it, hit X, and move it over here. And this one feels like it's a little bit out of center. Let me kind of try and put this one in the center like this. There we go. And then let's go ahead and add these to our mirrors group and see how it looks. We'll press Control J and then go ahead and smooth again. Maintaining that same angle there, it still looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and add this as well to this main group. Control J. There we go. All right, so we have that whole piece now. Let's go ahead and try and put it in place and see how it looks. To do that, I think what I'll do is grab these points over here. Maybe grab, actually, maybe I'll grab this face loop here, Alt-click between two faces, and then Alt-shift between two faces, and that puts that pivot point right there. Now I can move the cursor with Shift-S2 to that point, and then if we tab back into object mode, we can move our origin to the 3D cursor. Now when we move and place it, it'll move and scale and rotate from that point. All right, so let's bring the vehicle back. We'll bring the images back and the wheels. And let's go to that front view again, and now we can use that front view to kind of put this in place. So let's say it needs to be right about here on the door. And then I'll hit S and scale that down. Maybe we better move it out just a bit like this. And let's scale it down a little bit more. And it looks to me like it may be a little bit long in this area. However, we are going to turn it, so let's not panic quite yet. I'm going to move this and kind of scale these up so they fit the image kind of like this. There we go. And then let's put this right about here. And now let's go to that top view with the 7 key. Let's move this forward and we'll kind of rotate it back like this. Yeah, so we're getting fairly close to that. So maybe if this is like this and we're turning it like that, yeah, that's getting there. That's getting a little bit better. So let me scale it down a smidge and let's take a look. All right. Yeah, actually, I think that's a pretty good size. let's take this now. Let's move the cursor with Shift S1 to the center of the grid. And of course, let's move that origin to it. And then that will allow us to add a mirror modifier over here. We've got some issues, so let's try and apply the rotation, Control A and rotation, and there we go. All right, so those actually, I think, look to be a fairly good size here. I think that works pretty well. What we need to do now is work on the actual hinges connecting it to the vehicle. And it looks like the rear view mirror here is actually connected to the door, not the side of the cab. So let me tab into edit mode and select everything and move this back a bit like this. Yeah, it looks like it's connected to the door because if I recall, in a couple of the reference images, we can see the door open and the rear view mirror is kind of rotated forward as the door is opened. So let's go with that for now. And in the next video, we will begin working on the door hinges and this connecting piece for the rear view mirror.